Everybody, buckle up.
Everybody buckle up.
A lot goes on in the car, but remember, you're in control. Stand firm. Only move when you hear the click that says they're buckled in. Never give up until they buckle up. Learn more at safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Herbally Yours.
And welcome back. I'm your host, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com, and today we are interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Moss. Dr. Moss is on the adjunct faculty at the University of Bridgeport Nutrition Institute and also is the head of Moss Nutrition, and you can find him at mossnutrition.com. And we're talking here today about disturbances in insulin metabolism and Alzheimer's disease, which for some people might sound like, insulin, I'm thinking diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, I'm thinking brain, but Dr. Moss is bringing that together for us today. So, Dr. Moss, how about the insulin blood sugar story? What do we need to know to fully understand the link to Alzheimer's disease?
Well, the blood sugar story, first of all, it is an issue and an epidemic issue, and certainly knowing the blood sugar is only half the story. The sugar is there, and hopefully the right amount, many times not the right amount, sometimes too high, because it didn't have insulin to basically direct it where it needs to go. Glucose will maintain and will always be imbalanced unless the right amount of insulin that is working correctly. We've heard about insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, where you have insulin, it just doesn't work correctly. There is a problem with it, again, many times due to lifestyle issues.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there increased incidence of Alzheimer's linked to diabetes?
Yes. Many studies have demonstrated that the diabetic has a greatly increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. The process of diabetes and the process of Alzheimer's disease from an underlying metabolic standpoint is virtually the same. That's why more and more research papers are now calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. Exactly.
Such a good point. What about recommending that people know their A1C?
Yeah, this is, of course, is a measurement of blood sugar status, of diabetes status, and certainly, while not the only indicator right now in terms of commercial availability and accuracy, it is one of the best indicators of whether you are at risk for diabetes, and by extension, this can be used as read as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease also.
Now, explain to our listeners what oxidative stress is and how this has a role in Alzheimer's as well.
Right. Oxidative stress, or we've heard about the free radicals, it has to do with actually the way the body makes energy. And many listeners have heard about the little things in your cell called mitochondria. And what mitochondria are supposed to do is literally the little furnaces, and what they're supposed to do, little fires, and what they're supposed to do is burn raw materials, in this case fats, carbohydrates or protein, but mainly, for the most part, in terms of what we're talking about, burning glucose and to make energy, to make ATP. Well, like any other furnace, any other fire, nothing burns 100% clean. And what can happen is that we get sparks. And these sparks, which we see coming out of a fire or our furnace, when it happens in the mitochondria in our human body on microscopic levels, they're called free radicals. And like sparks, a spark, when improperly controlled, can start a fire. And of course, we have proper insulation of our furnace. We have other controls to keep the sparks from starting a fire. Well, the body has the same thing when it's functioning well. These free radicals are always being generated in the process of making energy. However, if insulin is not working right, in the lifestyle issues, the mitochondria stops working right, and we lose the ability to adequately not only control the free radicals, but we'll start getting more of these free radicals. And literally, they can start fires, if you will. In this case, interacting with various cells and creating disturbances in cell metabolism, which can lead to coronary artery disease, or in the case of this discussion, oxidative stress. Free radicals also contribute to the formation of the tangles and the plaques.
Now, Dr. Moss, you did mention several lifestyle issues that can certainly be linked to this inflammatory process, this increase in oxidative stress. But you yourself are really an expert in nutrition, so both in terms of diet and in terms of specific supplements. And I do want to remind our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Moss, and you can find him at mossnutrition.com. So why don't we talk about some of the things people can do?
Sure. Let's talk about lifestyle first. Let's talk about diet most specifically. And I subscribe, I think, to the philosophy that I don't know if I'm an expert or not, but one thing experts do, the true experts, is basically can distill things down to their simplest, most cost-effective elements. And when it comes to diet, I kind of jumped off that train that says always do this and never do that. I kind of, and on the right now, I'm in kind of like the approach that Grandma used to use. I want to find the experts, go back in history, and moderation, variety, and common sense. The body, the healthy body, is a very resilient, very adaptive mechanism. And so just look at, you don't have to deprive yourself of anything, but use common sense. No, I'm not saying never have an ice cream cone or a bagel or a donut or whatever, but use common sense, moderation. Once in a while as a snack is fine. But ideally, most of the time, you're having a healthy meal or healthy meals. And I think everybody knows what a healthy meal is. Unprocessed food as much as possible. Not never have processed food, but as much as possible. Unprocessed, unrefined grains, whole sources of protein, healthy sources of red meat, occasionally, healthy sources of chicken and fish, occasionally, healthy vegan sources of protein. Same thing goes with fat. Various vegan sources, various animal-based sources, occasionally, with as little processing as possible. But maintaining a good sense of balance in terms of diet, that's where the research, and again, common sense, I think, is the strongest. And when you look at the studies on centenarians, and they're interviewed, and research in terms of what they attribute to their long lives, very rarely do you see dogma or extreme. You see balance, moderation. I have a glass of wine. I have a little dessert. But it's a life of moderation. So that would be the best recommendation I can make, not just about diet, but lifestyle in general. Look at it in terms of moderation. In terms of supplements, there are many things that can be done that will be helpful. I always like to keep in mind, though, that the word supplement is exactly what it says. It's supplemental. It's supplemental to a healthy lifestyle. It does not replace a healthy lifestyle in any way, shape, or form. So the idea that I'm going to take a supplement to counteract my fast food meal, that's more fantasy than reality. No research supports that. With that in mind, Certainly, supplements that can be very helpful are going to be number one, as we alluded to in the case of the free radical discussion, various antioxidants. Vitamin C and vitamin E come to mind. Certainly, many of the more plant-based antioxidants, the flavonoid type of compounds, bioflavonoids, and there's many others on the market. Catechin that comes from green tea, many food-based antioxidants. Resveratrol comes to mind. Many can be found on the market now. In terms of improving insulin metabolism, B vitamins are extremely important, so a good B complex. There are certain minerals that come into play. Chromium and vanadium come into play in terms of insulin metabolism. To a lesser extent, in terms of insulin metabolism, magnesium is very important. Potassium is very important. Zinc is very important in terms of insulin metabolism. And then there's various herbals that have been found to help with insulin metabolism. I think one of the big star players right now is berberine. Has shown to be very helpful in terms of improving insulin metabolism. And that's just really, I think, scratching the surface of some of the more popular, most well-documented nutrient supplements that can be used to be helpful.
Well, in terms of berberine, I always enjoy that because it's a bitter, and I think one of the things really missing from a standard American diet is that bitter flavor, which you find throughout more ethnic-based diets.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. When you look at many of the European populations, they make it a point of having all four tastes at the meal, sweet, sour, salty, bitter. And we've kind of lost that in this country. We certainly got the sweet and salty part.
Yeah, we have that.
And not so much the sour and the bitter. In European populations, you certainly see fermented foods, sauerkraut, they have that sour thing in there, and also the use of various bitters compounds. So I think you make a very good point that increased ingestion of these unprocessed sour and bitter foods can be very helpful for Americans and help with the American chronic illness scene.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Moss. Any parting comments for our listeners as well as information on how to find you?
Sure. I think one of the real tragedies right now in terms of what you read and hear about with Alzheimer's disease is a sense of hopelessness, of inevitability, not only in terms of the people who are aging and the patients, is that this is the way it is. There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. Just, if you get dealt a bad hand, a bad genetic hand, just write your will. And even more tragically, you read the accounts of the caretakers and the lives that they live trying to take care of friends and loved ones who are just degrading.
Well, I want to thank you for that information. And listeners, you can find Dr. Moss at mossnutrition.com. And thank you so much for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.